Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's Shadow at Night for Wednesday, May the 7th, 2025. On the show tonight, Mark Carney met virtually with the premiers today to discuss his meeting yesterday with Donald Trump, how it went, you know, what he said behind closed doors privately, what we need to do to respond, what we need to do to fight back. And I'm sure some premiers were more enthusiastic than others. Many of them spoke to the press right after, of course, because the press was waiting outside. And speaking of the press waiting outside, even if it's independent media, why on earth would you just walk past them knowing they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that follow them on social media? People like, well, Rebel News. Alexa Lavoie was trying to interview some conservative members as they came out of their caucus meeting yesterday, and they just kind of cruised. We've got video of this. They just kind of cruised right by. Same with our buddy Right Blend. He was outside trying to get some quotes, and they were just walking right past him. What the hell's going on? Independent media is your friend, Conservative Party of Canada, and I think it's time you start understanding that. Joe Rogan even took a shot at Pierre Poilievre in his, not his latest podcast, but the second from last that came out last week or maybe early this week. And we've got a clip to play for you from that a little bit later on in the show. James O'Keefe, formerly of Project Veritas and now of OMG, O'Keefe Media Group, OMG. He dropped a bomb today, a bomb about the royal family. And we're going to get to that towards the end of the show tonight and cover it more in the extension for All Access Nighthawks on shadowdavis.com just after 9 o'clock Central tonight. It will also be available on the Telegram group, the Shadow at Night community on Telegram. If you're not a member of that, I suggest you go ahead and join the people there. Warm, welcoming, and fun, and very knowledgeable about the stuff we go deeply into once that part of the show begins, weeknights after 9 o'clock Central. All right. As always, the Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Silver is amazing. It has several natural health benefits, and it's been used for hundreds of years for health and healing. That's the main reason they made silverware from silver. But seriously, this nano silver from Silverceuticals is the best and safest silver you can find. There are hundreds of studies and reports on it. I've read some of the studies myself, and it's mind-blowing. One of the things that sets SilverCeuticals apart is that it washes out of your body in 24 hours. No silver buildup and no turning blue. And it won't even harm the good bacteria your body needs. It's so effective they can use very small concentrations of silver, like 10 and 32 parts per million, and still outperform other silvers that have up to 3,000 parts per million. It's safer and more effective at the same time. It is an incredibly small particle that is small enough to work through your body, but big enough not to fall out of suspension. They infuse it into almost all of their products. It works in facial serums, toothpaste, gels, and even gummies that work to help your immune system.
You see, you're not going to turn blue. It's not going to happen to you. And the health benefits from these products are absolutely enormous. As a matter of fact, with that facial serum, you can look significantly younger, significantly faster than any other products on the market. And you can go and read all about the research on the website, CanadaNanoSilver.com. If you want to ask questions to Kevin and Anna, you saw the phone number there on the screen. You can always call them, or you can contact them through the contact tab on the website. It's in the upper right-hand corner, CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. All right, who's here and who's watching tonight? John, hello, how are you? That's John McMorrin, by the way. I know there's a lot of Johns out there, and I thought, well, maybe I can go ahead and names like John and Dave, I can probably add a last name too, and I'm sure people won't mind. Hello, Stephen from Belleville, back in the house tonight. Pat watching from Whitby, Ontario. Hello, Phil in Wainwright, Alberta. Frank is watching from Huntsville, where he says, go Leafs, go. I guess the hockey games are starting tonight. I haven't watched any of that, and the Winnipeg Jets apparently played in the most exciting NHL hockey game ever the other night, and I didn't know about it until like the next day or maybe the day after that. Crazy. Hello, Marge, watching in Gull Lake, Alberta. Wallace is watching in Meadow Lake. Paul in Tyndall, Manitoba. Hello, Christine in Georgetown, Ontario. Naranda's watching in Calgary tonight on Facebook. Hello, Rumble. Hello, Patricia0711. Amnesty Anarchy. Louis DeVite, Starliner, Nutsy, Bulch, She-Wolf, 54, Uniacke, all you guys. Don't forget to like and share, you guys. Get this out to as many people as you possibly can. It's important because you know what happens when you do that is people will go, hey, here's something I've never seen before. And they'll click on it and they might like it and they might come back and they might like the page themselves, and that expands the audience. And when the audience expands, we can get better guests and we can do better shows here for you. So every little bit counts. Don't forget, like and share on whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and get it out there to all those people who have yet to hear of us. Shadow at Night, weeknights, 8 o'clock Central. However, I do have a special programming note for you. Starting at the beginning of June, I'm going to curb the show to 4 nights a week. It'll be Monday through Thursday. I'm going to take Fridays off through the summertime. I hope you guys don't mind. So I will be available in case something major breaks on a Friday or on a weekend, as I always am. But I'm going to gear it down a little bit for the summer, June, July, August anyway, from Monday to Friday to Monday to Thursday. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to need that for my own sanity. Okay. What's our first story tonight? It's Mark Carney meeting with the premiers virtually on a conference call today. This is from Business Intelligence for BC, written by the Canadian Press. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says Canada's premiers and the Prime Minister Mark Carney will meet in person in Saskatchewan June 1st and 2nd. What do they call that? The First Ministers Meeting, the FMM. We're going to play some video of Doug Ford for you in just a couple of minutes. I know you're excited about that. We also have some video of David Eby as well, because they did talk about Western separation, or at least Alberta separation, in that virtual call today. We're not going to mention what Doug Ford said because he's going to say it all in his clip. What else have we got here? Danielle Smith. We've got something Danielle Smith said yesterday, which is actually quite interesting. We're not going to talk about Doug Ford. Let's scroll down here. Carney and Trump spent about 2 hours together yesterday at the White House, including a half hour in front of the cameras in the Oval Office. What happened, I'm wondering, during that other 90 minutes? What were they talking about? Here's one. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew sent Carney a letter this morning pitching federal-provincial partnership on several nation-building projects. They include creating a trade corridor through the Port of Churchill. Well, duh. Establishing indigenous fair trade zones, developing critical minerals infrastructure. That's such a hypocrisy coming from the NDP, who have been lobbying to keep all of the critical minerals in the ground because of environmental and indigenous rights. In his letter, Canoe called his province the Costco of critical minerals. Canoe said Manitoba stands ready to collaborate with the Prime Minister and other provinces and territories to build a stronger Canada on projects of national interest. Carney and Trump appeared to emerge from the White House meeting pleased with how it had gone. Yeah. Trump indicated he liked Carney and there had been no tension during their talks. Carney said that while he and Trump are now fully engaged, there's a lot more work to do. What else have we got here? Oh, Fen Hampson, a Carleton University professor and co-chair of a group of experts on Canada-U.S. relations. You got to get the academics into these stories, right? Left-wing corporate media. He said Carney has to manage a two-track set of negotiations with the U.S. First, he faces coming negotiations on the CUSMA, the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Trade Agreement, scheduled to be reviewed next year. Trump indicates he wants it to be reviewed sooner. Not sewer. That's the Vancouver story I have coming up, sewer in the streets, and a whole bunch of U.S. news towards the end of the show tonight. This academic went on to say there's the more immediate negotiation challenge of persuading Washington to lift recently imposed tariffs on Canadian exports. That's the first order of the day, blah, 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 blah. Now, Trump said straight out yesterday, we're not lifting the tariffs. He said it right in front of Carney, right in front of all the cameras, all the media. Would you consider lifting the tariffs? No. When asked why, well, that's just the way it is. That's just how it is, Trump said. And then Carney at that point was trying to get into the mix, and Trump wasn't having it. He just didn't acknowledge him. You got to wonder what it's like sitting in a room with a guy like Donald Trump, a guy who absolutely commands pretty much all of the attention in the room, not because he demands it personally, but because that's just where the attention goes. The guy is the biggest star, aside from being the U.S. president, the biggest star on the planet. Now, Jasmine Lane, our friend Jasmine, put together this Carney compilation and put it out on social media earlier today. I thought it was great. So let's go ahead and play it for you.
I think we can change Donald Trump. I don't think so. Not at this stage.
Get you to lift tariffs on Canada?
No.
Why not?
Just the way it is.
And a person who draws his inspiration from President Trump, like Pierre Poilievre, will kneel down before him.
You're a transformational president, focus on the economy with a relentless focus on the American worker, securing your borders, ending the scourge of fentanyl and other opioids, and securing the world.
Before he stands up to him, he's in sync with President Trump.
I thought you were excellent, and I think we have a lot of things in common.
Pierre Poilievre is also choosing to be willfully blind to the many and growing threats that face our country.
We don't really want cars from Canada, and we put tariffs on cars from Canada, and at a certain point, it won't make economic sense for Canada to build those cars. And we don't want steel from Canada because we're making our own steel, and we're having massive steel plants being built right now as we speak. We really don't want Canadian steel, and we don't want Canadian aluminum and various other things.
What the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used. So anyway,
Trudeau, when I spoke to him, I used to call him Governor Trudeau. I think that probably didn't help his election. But when I spoke to him, I said, so why are we taking your cars? Why are we taking we want to make them ourselves. I mean, I said, and if the price of your cars went up, or if we put a tariff on your cars of 25%, what would that mean to you? He said, that would mean the end of Canada. He actually said that to me. And I said, that's a strange answer, but I understand his answer. But no, I mean, it's hard to justify subsidizing Canada to the tune of maybe $200 billion a year. We protect Canada militarily, and we always will. We're going to, that's not a money thing. But we always will. But, it's not fair.
Carney also said yesterday that Canada is not for sale. He said that after, what was the quote? I'll paraphrase him here. I've spoken to the owners of the country over the last month, maybe something like that. But he did say he spoke to the owners of the country. And that got my head scratching a little bit. And I thought maybe last night, even on the show, I thought, who's he referring to there? Because Charles, the king, is coming into open parliament at the end of the month, cancer and all. Was he referring to the royal family? Or was he referring to the people of Canada? You see, there's a lot of people who think, he's just talking about us. He's talking about the people, the ones that voted him prime minister. And maybe that's true, and maybe it's not. Our friend Tiana Truthseeker did a piece on that today. I thought was very interesting.
See the meeting between Carney and Donald Trump, where Donald Trump pretty much steamrolled Carney, and Carney sat there like a little girl, basically saying, Canada's not for sale. And I consolidated with the owners of Canada, and everybody's wondering who the owners are, and a bunch of people are saying it's us Canadians that are the owners. I'm pretty sure we don't have any rights. Okay, we're just tax slaves to the crown. And if you're wondering and saying things like, well, we're not part of the crown anymore, in the 80s we got our own independence and we got our own charter of rights that was never signed into being, so it's not a real country. And why is King Charles coming at the end of May to open up our parliament? Isn't that a little weird and ceremonious? But hey, you know what? That's just my conspiracy mind going all over the place. Anyway, I decided to look into who the owners of Canada are, and I found a bunch of policies. Every policy I've read, whether it was like Policy Horizon or UN policies or anything to do with the future of Canada, it always states stakeholders into Canada. Stakeholders because Canada's a corporation, not a country. And the interesting thing is I found 10 families who are billionaires in Canada who absolutely own and monopolize everything, from communications to newspapers to MSM to oil to mining and everything, which is why Canada is not a free enterprise, and they do not allow competition to come in, which is why Canadians pay the highest cell phone bills around the world. But let me just show you these 10 families. Now, if you go down to this website called Economics from the Top Down, this goes into detail what everything that is owned by these families. And you've got the McCain family, which is food, the Katz family, the Fidani family, which I believe is in real estate and owns almost all of like Toronto, the Richardson family, the Saputo family, again food, the Rogers family, your cell phone providers, the Pattison family, who owns basically a lot of advertising, and they started off as a dealership, then went into newspapers and thing, the Irving family, oil, the Weston family, and the Thompson family. And Trump was 100% correct when he said that the Canada actually depends on the United States more than we do on them, because this is our trade. These are our top 4 trade partners, and look at how much we trade with the United States versus China, versus the United Kingdom, and then versus Japan. So then I went and looked into stakeholders, and stakeholders refers to an individual or group that derives benefits from the use of resources and concern about a particular issue and or holds legal or de facto rights to manage or make decisions, especially down here if you look at the green part. And what's really funny is the Mike Myers elbows up people. Guess what? He got named in the P. Diddy case. So, elbows up, you guys. Woo! I actually think you guys did a good thing by electing Mark Carney, because not only did billions of dollars get transferred by the Governor General of Canada while Parliament has been closed, which no one is talking about because you can't question anything, and it went into who knows where, but now we've got King Charles coming to open up our parliament, almost as if saying that we're still part of the crown. But that's okay, whatever. Honestly, I think you guys sped this deal up with us becoming the 51st state. So good job, elbows up, crew.
She cracks me up. I got to get her back on soon. So I was having a discussion with our friend Jeff Stone from Tacit Investigations and Security today. He's always good for theories, and I haven't talked to him in a while. Jeff, we got to talk more. But he was saying that Alberta, Saskatchewan, Trump definitely wants. As a matter of fact, he wants the entire West for the seaports and for the rare earth and obviously for the energy. But there's something else to do with gold that's going on. Trump is going over to the United Arab Emirates or maybe Saudi Arabia next week. And apparently there's going to be some great big announcement, which is going to battle back the BRICS nations and make the U.S. currency dominant again in the world, because it's been losing a lot of power worldwide in the past 10 years or so. And Trump wants to restore that. He wants to make the U.S. dollar again, and it still is, but it's not as strong as it was. He wants to make it the absolute dominant currency on the planet. Does that mean he wants it to be the only one? I don't know. Does that mean a worldwide universal dollar? Is he actually taking us into the Great Reset, the New World Order, and we're just going, yay, Donald Trump? Or is it a move to strengthen the United States? Strengthen the United States so much that all of the countries surrounding the United States have no choice but to join with the Americans. He knows that Alberta is teetering on the brink right now, thinking about sovereignty. Saskatchewan also. He doesn't want Ontario. Quebec is going to go off on its own. What happens to the Atlantic provinces after that? What happens to BC when they're cut off from the rest of Canada? Because Alberta and Saskatchewan are maybe one big nation or two separate nations who work together. What happens to Manitoba? Does it try to stay with a faltering Canada, or does it go along with Trump or these independent provinces again and become part of that? There's all kinds of pieces in play right now, and it's actually quite fun to watch. It's going to be tumultuous, obviously. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of separation talk right now across the country, and I'm getting the feeling that the premiers are taking it seriously. This is Doug Ford yesterday, piping off. Watch what he said in case you missed it yesterday. Watch.
About political stripes, by the way. We have a prime minister down there, and he's going to be sitting down, and he's going to give it everything he can. This is a time to unite the country, not people saying, oh, I'm leaving the country, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You know, united we stand, divided we fall.
So obviously taking a shot at Danielle Smith there for the separation, which, by the way, she does not want. She's still, maybe she does deep inside, but publicly she's saying, I want an independent Alberta in a united Canada, whatever that's supposed to mean. Anyway, here is Doug Ford today, a little bit more conciliatory.
And I was pretty blunt. I said, you know, it's time that your government starts showing some love.
He's talking about the premiers and prime minister meeting via teleconference today, and he's talking about his interaction with Mark Carney.
To Saskatchewan and Alberta, because as I said, like, the last prime minister showed no love. Matter of fact, to the contrary. So it's nice that we're heading out there to Saskatchewan for an FMM meeting. I think it's on June the 1st and June the 2nd, which is a good olive branch, and had a good discussion. So I'm a big believer of pipelines, big believer of getting rid of C-69, and we need to unite this country. And the way we're going to unite this country, as I mentioned to the Prime Minister in front of the premiers, show some love to the people of Alberta and Saskatchewan. And let's start diversifying our trade when it comes to oil. Let's start building pipelines west, east, north, and yes, south as well. But they're getting a discount, by the way. We ship them $100 million worth of oil. They turn it into $300 million and ship it out. I think the number, we're giving them a discount of 20%. Well, let's start shipping it out, because we know, and I've mentioned that to the U.S. ambassador today, that if you take oil off the trade, they have a $50 billion surplus with Canada. And I encourage them, let's start moving forward. Let's sign a deal, and let's bring certainty and build this AmCan fortress that I've been talking about for a number of months. And that was our conversation for the most part.
Are you hopeful that you can diffuse the Alberta secession movement with this kind of talk? I mean, I don't know if there's any talk about Premier Smith's potential referendum.
Well, I just always say, united we stand, divided we fall, and that was my message today. And let's continue making sure that we unite the country, not divide the country. And I spoke pretty strongly in support of Alberta and Saskatchewan because they've been ignored for the last 10 years. They've been treated terribly, to be very frank. And I think the new Prime Minister Carney, understands that, and he's going to be out there having great conversations. And just that one move, bringing FMM out to Saskatchewan, that's a big move. So everyone congratulated him on how he performed. Didn't matter what political stripe we came from. I really encouraged Premier Legault to get that pipeline through Quebec. The last poll I saw was in the high 70s that people want that pipeline. So it's going to help the entire country. We don't have to be so reliant on the U.S. This is a game changer now. This is an opportunity to build ports in the north, no matter if it's through James Bay or through Manitoba up there in Churchill. That's what we have to do to protect our country. We also have to get minerals out of the ground, not just here in Ontario, right across the board. I think the date that we're always looking for is we have to get permits before 2 years and start moving. That's right across the board for the territories and for the other provinces that have critical minerals.
Don't these guys ever get tired of talking out of their ass? I mean, these are all the things Poilievre was saying during the election campaign, where Doug Ford and his campaign manager were dissing the Conservatives for having a bad campaign. And the media, of course, picks up on that. Oh, division in the Conservative Party. And by the way, the PCs, the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, not affiliated with the National Conservative Party. None of the Conservative parties are affiliated with each other. The only party that is affiliated provincially and federally is the NDP. That's it. So that whole thing was a complete and total lie. And the media knew it, but they told it anyway. Doug Ford should mind his business. Just stick to Ontario, man. Stick to Ontario. That's it. Just stop talking about national unity. Mind your business. There's other things that you need to be occupied with. David Eby is another one who needs to stop talking out of his ass. The NDP Premier of British Columbia. He was spoken to by reporters after this conference call today, and here's what he said.
Things you didn't mention in terms of topics of discussion was national unity. We've heard this week from Danielle Smith twice around the way that they are changing policies there that could make it easier to have a referendum on Western separation. Was this a priority for the premiers and the prime minister? Is there more that needs to be done to address concerns the West has around things like equalization? Are you worried at all about the increasing rhetoric about Alberta looking at separation?
All right. So the answer to this question should be this. What does that have to do with British Columbia? Instead...
I won't speak for other premiers, but I'll say that British Columbians are all in for Canada. And here in this province, we understand that this is the moment for all of us to stand strong together, arm in arm as a country. And that doesn't take anything away from our reasonable demands that the federal government ensure we have access to the same level of funding, the same opportunities that Quebec and Ontario get, and the same level of respect. But the idea of separating here is a non-starter. I understand. You've got a couple of Conservative premiers in Saskatchewan and Alberta. Their preferred candidate was not successful in the federal election. They have strong bases of support for the Conservatives in those provinces. They're navigating tricky waters. But I certainly encourage them all, Premier Smith, Premier Moe, and I believe that they're on board for this, to work together for the good of the country, to hold the country together, and to push back strongly on any kind of separatist sentiment. When a Conservative MLA here tweeted out a separatist image of Western Canada approvingly, and that we would become a protectorate of the United States, I didn't hesitate to point out how dumb that was. And I think he recognized how dumb it was. He said he was texting while he was driving, which is also dumb. Take the moment to defend our country, take the moment to stand together, understanding that it can be more challenging in other jurisdictions, but this country needs to stick together right now. That's what I stand for.
David, I'm talking to you directly right now. Maybe you should worry about your own province and not answer any of these questions about national unity, because there's no movement in your province, at least not right now, to separate from Canada. You've got your own problems to worry about. For example, public defecation reaching an all-time high in downtown Vancouver. It's reached new heights in the city. Residents, business owners, and business improvement area leaders are calling for action that goes beyond the routine cleanups. The unfortunate thing is we've been talking about the feces issue here for quite a while now, says Wally Wargalette, executive director of the Gastown Business Improvement Society. Wargalette says he was forced to implement his own initiative, affectionately dubbed the Poop Ferry Program, after other waste collecting programs proved ineffective. Run by social enterprise Clean Start BC, the project was initiated last year before lack of funding brought it to a halt a few months in. It was reinstated in March, and volunteers had their work. Can you imagine being a Yeah, I'll volunteer for that. Hands go up. I'll go clean up. Volunteers had their work cut out for them from the get-go. In Gastown, the program saw 155 cleanups through the month. I'm sure there was many more they missed. Well, the downtown east side had a total of 267. The Poop Ferry Program. Drug paraphernalia vending machines. Free hard narcotics to drug addicts. That's what's going on in BC. So shut up, David Eby. Mind your business. Take care of your own province. Oh, here's another thing about BC. Over 800 special ballots mistakenly kept in BC riding elections, Canada says. Ballots came from 74 electoral districts across the country, were left in Coquitlam Port, Coquitlam office. What? 800 ballots cast during the recent election, mistakenly kept at the office of a returning officer in BC. That comes directly from Elections Canada. The agency says all registered political parties have been informed that 822 special ballots cast by electors in 74 electoral districts across the country, were left with the returning officer in the riding of Coquitlam Port, Coquitlam. Elections Canada says the ballots should have been returned to its headquarters by April 28th at 6 p.m. to allow them to be counted. Special ballots include votes made by mail and those cast in person at an Elections Canada office. Over 500 of the ballots mistakenly left in Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, were for the electoral district of Port Moody, Coquitlam. Others were for ridings across the country. What? Including Halifax, Nepean, and Vancouver Centre. Elections Canada says an initial analysis shows the outcomes in those 74 districts were not affected by mislaid ballots. But what if they were? That's brutal. That's completely brutal. Danielle Smith. Now, remember what I told you earlier in the show? Danielle says she doesn't want Alberta to separate from Canada. She wants it to be whatever I said before. she wants sovereign Alberta in a unified Canada, whatever the hell. Danielle says she won't muzzle UCP caucus as referendum talks heat up. We all have different ideas about how we get respect from Ottawa. I'm not going to be demonizing anybody who may have a different view than me. You see, that's how conservative-minded people think, whereas the left, shut them down! Don't let them say anything. They're not allowed to have an opinion. Danielle will not stop members from speaking out. She told reporters on Tuesday she wasn't bothered by UCP MLA Jason Stephen publicly calling for a referendum on Alberta separation a day earlier. She said, we all have different ideas about how to get respect from Ottawa. I'm not going to be demonizing anybody who's got a different view than me. Stefan declined to say how he'd vote in a referendum on Alberta independence. I guess that means that he will vote to separate. The Central Alberta MLA wrote in an op-ed last week that it was time for Alberta to explore other options outside of Confederation after the Liberals won their fourth straight federal election. And Stephen didn't immediately respond to a request to be interviewed for the article. Speaking of Alberta separation, Yves Blanchette, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, was asked about that today by a reporter. What advice would you have for Alberta in terms of getting out of Canada? And here's what he said.
People in Alberta who want to separate, do you have any tips for them on how to
Our success so far does not place me in a position to give them tips about what to do, but I could give them tips about what not to do. Not now. The first idea is to define oneself as a nation. Therefore, it requires a culture of their own. And I am not certain that oil and gas qualify to define a culture. But it's theirs to decide if they want to vindicate the right to self-determination. I would never interfere in that. It belongs to them. I would like us to be the first to do so.
Why, when Quebec talks about separation, it's a giggle? All the reporters, I would like us to be first, though. Duceppe says, not Duceppe, Blanchette. And all the reporters and all of the people surrounding him. Oh, that's so cute. But Alberta, you're a redneck monster! Kind of amazing, don't you think? The double standard that still happens in this country. And they don't seem to understand out east that double standard is probably the number one reason, aside from the fact that everybody would do better in an independent Alberta, Albertans anyway. They'd all do better. They'd all be making more money, less taxes, cheaper gas, cheaper everything. But that's not how people vote for the most part. They vote emotionally. And the more these Eastern yahoos keep dissing the West and Alberta in particular, the bigger the movement is going to become. They don't get it. Or maybe they do get it and want Alberta to leave for whatever reason. I don't think so, but who knows? Look at this. Now, this was very interesting. Thank you, Michael, for sending me this earlier today. I would have missed this. Heavy lifting begins as Suncor starts refurbishing decades-old upgrader components. This is a big deal because this is like a multi-million, if not billion-dollar project. Oil sands giant Suncor Energy has begun a 3-month outage at one of its upgraders so it can begin to replace enormous components first installed almost 60 years ago. The Calgary-based company is in the midst of a multi-year project to replace 8 original coke drums dating back to 1967 at its base mine site north of Fort Mac, with the goal of extending the upgrader's life by 30 years. Why? In a website post last year, when one of the drums was being transported from Edmonton to the mine, Suncor said the load took up the entire width of the road, including the shoulder lanes. The outage at the upgrader, one of 2 at the mine, began May 1st and is expected to last 90 days. Do they think that somehow Mark Carney is going to capitulate to the demands of Danielle Smith and revoke the No More Pipelines bill, No More Tanker bill, C-69? Is he just going to get rid of that? Never. This guy is a net zero zealot. If he does anything like that, I will be absolutely shocked. I don't think he will. But there's a lot of pressure on him. CEOs are calling on Carney to take action to support domestic energy sector. They want him to scrap the emissions cap on oil and gas producers and repeal industrial carbon pricing to help bolster the industry. Why would Suncor drop suddenly hundreds of millions of dollars for these upgrades? to extend the life of all of that equipment up there in Fort Mac unless they knew something was going on. So they're either banking on an independent Alberta joining the United States, or Carney dropping C-69 and all of the other caps that he's got on energy development. 38 CEOs of Canadian energy companies signed a letter congratulating Carney on his election and pitching policy measures they say would help him make good on his promise to build this fastest growing economy in the G7 that he talks so much about. Talked about an energy corridor west to east, but what kind of energy is he talking about? Is he talking about oil and gas? He never said that during the election. I guess maybe he didn't want to upset Quebec voters. I don't know. But if he does this, that's going to be his last term done, because Quebec will vote his ass right out. I don't know who they'd vote for. I guess the Bloc, or maybe the Conservatives. As a major contributor to the Canadian economy with significant untapped potential, the energy sector must play a pivotal role in your pursuit of this ambition, the letter reads. Your focus on fostering energy independence and enhancing Canada's energy infrastructure and clean tech requires major sector investment and globally competitive energy and carbon policies. And over the last decade, the layering and complexity of energy policies has resulted in a lack of investor confidence and consequently a barrier to investment. This whole thing about Carney being the prime minister still kind of a shock to me. I'll be completely honest with you. It's like a week and a half later, and Carney is the prime minister. Did I say president just now? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Prime minister, obviously. Like, Mark Carney? How did that even happen? How did Canadians become so easily fooled? But then again, I mean, here's a Carney voter.
Yeah. Carney won, so...
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Why did you vote for Carney?
Because he makes most sense out of people, so...
What makes the most sense to you from his policies?
I don't know.
Is there one specific policy that you were really interested in of his?
No.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Yeah, all right, bye-bye.
How many of them are like that? I mean, 8.5 million people voted for the Liberals. How many of that 8.5 million are what's going on? I think Rob Boudelier had a good point when he was on the show last week about people having to maybe pass a test or show their worth, show their net givers and not net takers in our system before they can be allowed to vote. Just because you're Canadian and 18 years old qualifies you right now. And in some cases, you don't even have to prove you're a Canadian citizen. I've been hearing from return officers who worked this past election. And you can't ask any of these people who you may suspect to be not Canadian citizens that question, or else you can be removed. Should there be some kind of threshold? A civics test, maybe? How about, what are the names of the candidates on the ballot in your riding? And what parties do they represent? Something simple like that? Or maybe should it be a little bit more difficult? Now, speaking of the Conservative Party of Canada, they had a caucus meeting yesterday. And you would think that the Conservatives have had time now to break down exactly how they were successful. Because they were successful in this election. I know they lost, but they picked up 25 new seats, and they did have some serious momentum towards the end of the election campaign. I think a lot of it had to do with independent media, YouTubers, people on Facebook, people on X, telling people the truth that the left-wing corporate media wouldn't. So if that's the case, and they know that, then why would they ignore independent media as they're walking out the door from their caucus meeting? Right Blend, our buddy Right Blend was in Ottawa yesterday wanting to talk to some of these conservative MPs, and they all pretty much just walked right past him without giving him a moment. Let's have a look.
Congratulations, Mr. Baber.
Great.
Congratulations on your election.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for standing up for Canadians during COVID. That's really appreciated. You stood on principle, and I'm telling you right now, Mr. Baber, that means a lot to Canadians, and we're very happy. Those of us who were discriminated against by our government are very happy to see a principled voice like yours in Parliament. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Brock, thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
It's good to
Appreciate
see you.
that.
And congratulations on your election win.
Thank you so much.
What are you and the Conservative Caucus going to do to protect Canada from censorship? Because we know that there's some concerns about that going ahead. Is there anything that you guys are going to do about that?
Well, there's probably plenty we're going to do about it, but I'm not going to talk about it at this point.
All right, thanks for your time. Jamil Javani, thank you so much. Congratulations, sir. Congratulations on your election. And thank you for being a voice for Canadians. And we're really excited to see what you do in the future. Do you have a comment on the 200 candidates running in the by-election in Battle River, Crowfoot?
Just focused on getting back to my office.
All right, I appreciate that. Pierre, congratulations on a very successful campaign. Thank you so much. Now, I know you have a good answer to this, and I really need to ask you this question.
I just want to ask you, we are seeing Canada in a boiling point when we saw the Western Canada want to separate. How the Conservative Party will work to make sure that united
Hey guys, how are you? Look at this incredible team we have here. Good to see you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's do it
Good to
again.
see you, buddy. Thank you. Congratulations.
How are you? Good to see you. Thank you for all
Good to see you.
Good
job, brother.
Still haven't gotten my beauty sleep though. How are you?
Very good to see you, man. Very good to see you. What a team. Holy
Gil Caucus.
Irish name.
Now, Mr. Polyev, I appreciate you're very busy, and I know you have a good question, good answer to this. But what makes you, Mr. Polyev?
We got a bright future.
All right, Mr. Polyev, I know you have a good answer to this.
In the future, and we're going to bring home a bright future for the country.
What makes you the best leader to go forward? I know you have a good answer.
There's many things. It's a long list. But thank you very much for being out today, guys. All the best.
All right, thanks, Pierre.
Now, Polyev was reasonably nice about things because he's got a canny sense. He understands that these people have got millions of followers on social media. But why not just stop and have a chit chat with them? Couple of minutes. It's not going to ruin your day. Or maybe the Conservatives had on the table in their caucus meeting something like, this independent media, it cost you. It cost us. It cost us the election because too many fringers scared the other side, those red Tories. And maybe they've got some kind of report that says they lost red Tories because of supporting the fringe of their parties too much or their party too much, which could mean a move to the middle or to the left from the Conservatives going forward. It'll be interesting to see how they position themselves in the next few weeks. Is Polyev going to stop talking about defunding the CBC? Because you got to break down the election and see exactly what was the problem. Why did we not break through? Well, here's the answer, Pierre. I'll give you the answer. There's a couple of things, but the first one is the complete intentional collapse of the NDP and those voters going to the Liberal Party. So for some reason, these voters who were supposed to support the little guy, the NDP, voted for a billionaire banker. How does that make any sense? To be their prime minister. Because they couldn't stomach the idea of a Pierre Polyev conservative government. One of the other things was Pierre, only towards the end of the campaign, started doing some independent media interviews. And the only one I'm aware of is Jasmine Lane. He did one with Jasmine, and there's a couple of other podcasts that his team picked for him that nobody has ever heard of before. So why wouldn't he come on a show like this? I mean, it makes perfect sense to come on a show like this and answer questions directly, doesn't it? Or maybe you go on Joe Rogan. The only real big podcast he did was the Jordan Peterson, and that was a fantastic podcast for Pierre. I think a lot of momentum was created amongst conservatives for Pierre Poilievre after that podcast. So listen to this. Here's Joe Rogan. I forget this guy who's the guest on the show. His name is Cameron, and he's a bow hunter. This was from a few days ago, but they're talking about Mark Carney being the Canadian Prime Minister, and then Pierre Poilievre. And Pierre Poilievre apparently was invited to go on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said, no, watch this.
Reminds me of what happened in Canada with the truckers.
Yes.
I mean, they froze
exactly.
their bank accounts.
Yeah.
Or people who donated to them.
Yeah. People who donated to them got their bank accounts frozen.
How insane.
Insane. And then that same party just won again. Good job, Canada.
Oh, my God. If they didn't have good bear hunting, I would never go there.
I do have to say, I offered to have that Pierre guy come on the podcast.
Really?
He didn't do it. Wouldn't do it. Thought it was too problematic. Or whatever. Jordan told me, I forget what he said, but they were telling him not to do it. Like his advisors were telling him not to do it. Hey, dumbass.
If they can't talk to you.
All right, so you might be thinking, well, why would it be beneficial to go on the Joe Rogan podcast? He's an American podcaster. Yes, he's got a big audience, but what's the big deal? I mean, it's still an American podcast. You talk about American things. Have a look at this, my friends. From Podchaser, the #1 podcast on Spotify in Canada is the Joe Rogan Experience. He's a big name in Canada, even if he does originate in the United States. Bad deal. You also had Patrick Bet David giving him a hard time. I personally wouldn't have done that particular one, but I definitely would have done Rogan. Because Rogan is not necessarily political, and they would have been able to talk about a whole bunch of other things, family stuff, hobbies even, because that's just what he does. Of course, they would have gotten into the politics. They would have gotten into the nitty-gritty of things. But it would have been so relaxed. It's like two buddies sitting around having a beer, talking in the garage or something. It's not like Patrick Bet David, who's got a panel of people who are judging you, all wearing suits and ties. Look at what Rogan wears, for goodness sakes. He's got a T-shirt on half the time. He's drinking whiskey and he's smoking cigars. But he's huge outside of the 13 million listeners he gets for each podcast. That's not in Canada. He gets maybe 2 million for each episode in Canada. That's just the audio podcast. Then you've got all the video clips that go around YouTube and Rumble and X. Hundreds of millions of views for each episode. This probably could have put Pierre Poilievre over the top. No, too problematic. We can't do it. Canadian politicians really need to wake up. Because if they don't, this country, Mark Carney is going to go ahead and just impose the censorship that he was talking about during the campaign. Say goodbye to the independent broadcaster. We will be gone. And I think further to that, they'll probably try and put some sort of an iron curtain up around our country to stop any sort of American podcasts like Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan from coming into the country. You can bet they're already talking about it, the lefties, because they want censorship. They want it bad. So bad. Here's a story from Rebel News. I'm going to have to refresh this because that free e-news banner keeps popping up on the website. It's terribly annoying. CBC ombudsman admits network lied during leaders' debates. According to the CBC ombudsman, in the April report, the number of complaints during the election exceeded the previous 3 months combined. Not a conspiracy theory. That's straight from CBC's own accountability office. And the biggest source of outrage? The leaders' debates, especially the English and French debates on the CBC. Not hard to see why. This was written by Sheila Gunn-Reid, by the way. Well, Rebel News was on the ground reporting. The CBC was on air lying about us. They weren't content to just be biased. They became the story, openly lobbying the debate commission to shut Rebel down. and all of the other independents that were there. They claimed the billboard truck was breaking the law. It wasn't. They claimed the journalists disrupted the debate. They didn't. In fact, our team, says Rebel News, was so well behaved, the debate commissioner, cornered by CBC and their allies, canceled the past debate scrum entirely, admitting they couldn't find a pretext to remove us. They falsely claimed our accreditation had been revoked. It hadn't. Then came the smear against Drea Humphrey. On national TV, Rosemary Barton claimed that remains of Indigenous children have been found in various places across the country. That's false. Even the CBC had to admit it in a buried online correction that read, what several Indigenous communities across Canada have discovered are potential burial sites or unmarked graves. No remains have been found at Kamloops or any other site, but instead of correcting it on air where they lied in prime time, they posted it on an obscure back page, as one complaint to the ombudsman put it. Her comment was made in prime time to an audience of the Canadian electorate, and the correction belongs in an equally prominent position. Let's be honest. CBC's entire debate coverage wasn't journalism. It was gatekeeping theater with taxpayer funding. During the French language debate, Rosemary Barton and David Cochrane openly trashed Rebel News, calling them very, very right-wing and claiming they trafficked in misinformation. Cochrane went so far as to suggest the Debates Commission should be accountable for letting us in, despite 2 court rulings affirming the legal right to be there. This is another viewer who complained they couldn't understand why these people, that was what they used, were allowed to ask questions, even though the independent journalists had been granted access. This kind of denigration of other journalists needs to stop. Another said, discrimination, puerile, unprofessional. Then there was David Cochrane's tantrum behind the scenes at the English debate, which multiple viewers linked directly to the sudden cancellation of the press scrum. Instead of doing your job, reporting the news, you turned into a whining, gatekeeping toddler, railing against Rebel News' presence as if they'd stormed the Bastille. And another voter said he swayed or influenced voters. That's definitely not his job. So what did the ombudsman say? Quiet, backhanded acknowledgement. Yes. Many complaints were found to have merit. No, they didn't say how many. No, they didn't name names. And no, they didn't hold their own colleagues accountable. And now with Mark Carney in charge, a man who promised to shovel another $150 million into the CBC on top of their existing $1.4 billion slush fund, don't expect anything to change. Expect them to get more confident in their lies and bias, not less. The CBC no longer reports the news. They manufacture narratives, target dissenters, and smear anyone who threatens liberal power, all while pretending to be neutral. This election, Canadians saw it live. They filed their complaints, and now even the CBC's own ombudsman cannot sweep it under the rug. The question isn't if the CBC is biased. That's settled. Cool. Some American news for you now as we wrap things up. And by the way, tonight on the extension, you guys, I'm going to throw that James O'Keefe bomb at you, the one he dropped earlier today that's already been seen millions and millions and millions of times. It has to do with the royal family, Prince Andrew in particular. And then we're going to go a little bit deeper into the Virginia Giuffre thing and how big this sex trafficking ring is across the world. Dr. Casey Means, Trump's new Surgeon General nominee, is RFK Jr. ally and Maha advocate. So why am I saying this to you? Because let's get rid of this Hugh Grant. President Trump will nominate Dr. Casey Means to serve as U.S. Surgeon General. He announced that today, shortly after the White House withdrew the president's earlier pick of Dr. Jeanette Nishawat for the key public health post. Mr. Trump said in a Truth Social post that Means has impeccable MAHA credentials, referring to the acronym Make America Healthy Again, a slogan used by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert H. Kennedy Jr. Sorry, H, did I say H? F. Her academic achievements together with her life's work are absolutely outstanding, Trump wrote. Dr. Casey Means has the potential to be one of the finest surgeon generals in United States history. And she believes in what we believe in, you guys. White House calls out Australian e-safety commissioner for censorship. This has to do with Billboard Chris. So let's have a look. The U.S. State Department has taken the unusual step of calling out the Australian government for censorship after an anti-trans activist posts on X were geo-blocked for being offensive. Canadian internet personality and anti-trans protester Chris Elston, better known as Billboard Chris, has received support from the White House while he waits for a tribunal judgment after taking the Australian government to court over its demand to have an offensive post removed. Billboard Chris last year was ordered by the Australian there's an e-safety commissioner in Australia that's coming here to take down a post on X attacking a transgender activist who was hired by the World Health Organization to draft care guidelines for trans and non-binary people. X initially refused to take the content down, but later geo-blocked it in Australia following a formal removal order from the e-safety commissioner. There she is right there, Julie Inman Grant. The U.S. Department of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor published a statement on social media Thursday last week saying it was deeply concerned by the decision to remove the post. Freedom of expression must be protected online and offline. And this could quite possibly affect trade relations between the United States and Australia, just like the same kind of thing is having an effect on the UK making a deal with the United States. So maybe in negotiations with Mark Carney or whoever he sends to negotiate with Trump's negotiating team, that will be a point of contention. Oh, by the way, we understand that you're going to try and enforce censorship in Canada. If you do that, then everything's off the table. Now, yesterday, the Supreme Court of the United States upheld the Donald Trump removal of trans people from the U.S. military. They said, yep, Trump can get rid of them. So the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, delivered a keynote address at Special Operation Forces last night after that ruling came down. And he said, I'm going to read the first paragraph, and then I'm going to play for you what he said later, right from his own mouth. I cannot tell you how humbled I am to be in this room amongst the absolute and very best that our country produces. You could pick any other ballroom in the country, including in Washington, D.C., and you're not going to find the likes of Americans like we have in this room. So good morning, and thank you very much for having me. Oh, sorry, that was this morning he did this. I want to thank the mayor and Senator Collins and all of Tampa for the incredible and wholehearted support that it gives to the United States military. SOCOM, CENTCOM have no better home than here on the Gulf Coast. So he went on in that speech, but this is the biggest thing that he said near the end.
Leaving wokeness and weakness behind. No more pronouns, no more climate change obsession, no more emergency vaccine mandates, no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that shit.
Wouldn't it be great to be American? Look at what's going on down there. It's so much better than what's going on up here. I know, I said it. But man, I mean, they're light years ahead of us in everything. I was talking to an employee of my bank yesterday. I've been having a bank account issue, so I had that straightened out yesterday. She's from Pakistan, and she told me that her husband is from India, and they're very worried about what's going on back home. And what's going on back home is that India is firing missiles at Pakistan. Islamabad calls it an act of war. It's all about that area of both of their countries called Kashmir. Even China's got a stake in this as well. And this is why India and Pakistan have been going at it for several years. But she also pointed out to me that it's all about religion. Pakistan mostly Muslim, whereas India in the northern regions is mostly Hindu, with some Khalistani a little bit further west. And so while they fight amongst themselves in India, the big fight is always between the Muslims of Pakistan and the Hindus of India. And that fight's been going on for centuries now. Centuries. And it looks like it's about to erupt again. Will the United States get involved? Look, now here's a clip from Donald Trump just today when asked about will the Americans get involved in the war or possible war between India and Pakistan. Look, he looks very exasperated answering this.
Fighting each other. I said, why don't you let them fight? Why are we getting in the middle of it? I said, let them fight. Sir, we want to do it. They go in and they end up fighting both of them. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Let them fight.
It's not our business. Let them fight. Same thing with Ukraine. That war, you know, if NATO hadn't got involved, the EU, Canada, the United States, that war would have been over in a week, 2 weeks, maybe. Done. Finished. Nobody would have been talking about it. Come to think of it, it doesn't seem like anybody's talking about it anymore right now. Anyway, interesting, isn't it? People stop caring. They stop taking the Ukraine flag down from their Facebook page. But if it comes back in the news somehow, some way in the next couple of weeks, that flag's going right back up, baby. Ukraine, stand with Ukraine. Ridiculous. Okay, here's a sneak peek at what's coming up in the extension tonight for you All Access Nighthawks. I'll be with you guys in a couple of minutes. If you're not an All Access member at shadowdavis.com, I encourage you to become one. You could be winning tomorrow night. We're going to do another draw. A Shadow at Night mug right there. It's a big 20-ouncer, or this Shadow at Night ball cap. Last week's winner, Mary Bennett, chose the ball cap. So she's going to be getting that in the next week or so. Delivery with this particular company is slow, but it does do the job. So another draw for one of those two things is coming up tomorrow night. You might be the winner if you make yourself a member at shadowdavis.com. World exclusive. Prince Andrew was underage girls. Tape of royal family advisor exposes Prince Andrew's sexual relations with minors and deep ties to Jeffrey Epstein. This is what, let me see if I have that video. This is what James O'Keefe was talking about when he released a teaser video for it. Was it last week? All over X. I think it got millions and millions and millions of views. Let's see if I have that here. Yeah, I do. He thinks this is going to be the biggest thing that he's ever broken. He's broken a lot of stuff. Watch this.
I'm going dark. I'm not suicidal. Pray for me. This one scares me, guys.
Right, so people were saying, there's just James O'Keefe being sensational again. You're dealing with the royal family and this sex smuggling ring. Hope dude has got, hope he's got a lot of protection. So this is coming up in the extension in just a couple of minutes on shadowdavis.com. We'll see you there. And if not, I'll catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central. Don't forget our guest is Nadine Ness from Unified Grassroots based in Saskatchewan. Tomorrow night, she's coming on to talk about Saskatchewan independence, and I want to get her reaction to the Saskatchewan NDP saying that she should be muzzled. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Central. The extension coming up in 2 minutes. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Thank you for being here tonight. I'll see you again soon, and I'll see you Nighthawks in 2 minutes.